Her talk today, which is embodiment and living from your heart, shares with us that not everything from the heart is all fabulous and wonderful, and so there's sometimes a little murkiness in there. And so Nikky is a licensed massage therapist. She has traveled, she's a holistic healer, she's a yogi, and she owns Wild Quartz Wellness here in Anchorage, and she'll tell you a little bit more about that after her talk. But let's just give her a very nice, warm Adam Center welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for the warm welcome. As we go around, I wanted to pass out, as we start this, well, actually, let me introduce, and then I'll pass this around. So, my name's Nikky. Like John said, I'm a licensed massage therapist, a holistic healer, yogi. Recently been getting into sound healing quite a bit, and so all of my work in the world is all around helping bring more ease to people's lives in mind, body, and spirit. And I do that through intuitive body work and sound healing, working with essential oils, guided relaxation, cacao, so all sorts of really yummy, delicious things that I absolutely love that I get to devote my life to studying because they're all part of my own journey as well. So that is a little bit about me. And I know we started with a little bit of grounding. I wanted to also bring us into some heart-centered awareness before I begin to talk. So what we're going to do is we're going to put both hands on our heart, and it's called heart breathing, heart breath. And so you're welcome to go at any rate or pace that feels good for you. There's no right or wrong pace. No, you can go faster if you want to go a little more, if you can go slower if you would like. So what we're going to be doing is, as we're breathing, we're going to bring our breath in through the mouth to the back of the throat. So, and as you do that, you're going to lift your chest, and then you'll exhale through the mouth. And you're going to continue that breath at whatever rhythm feels good for you. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way. And so we're going to just do this for a few rounds and really just begin to drop into our heart space. And so we're going to go ahead and begin, breathing in. And as you're breathing, just bringing your awareness into your heart, beginning to pull our energy and awareness to this heart space, to come into the room. This also helps us to all synchronize our hearts with each other. I know we're a pretty close-knit community here, but just beginning to really sync up our hearts to each other and to the space, and so that I can sync in with you all as well. So continuing to breathe a few more rounds of breath. And go ahead on your next exhale, just exhale fully. You can keep your hands where they are if you'd like. You can bring them down on your lap. And just begin to feel your feet on the ground, feeling your hips on the chair, maybe your back against the seat rest. Just dropping our awareness into our bodies, feeling the energy center of our heart. We begin to expand. Just coming into this present moment, right here, right now. Nowhere else to be, nothing to do or say. Just this opportunity to tune into your heart, your body. Letting go of any rushing from the trip getting here. You made it, you landed. You're just gifting yourself the opportunity to be here now. And I'll say a little prayer to start for myself and for the group. Thank you, Spirit, for our safe travels here. Calling in the 4 elements, east, south, west, north. Welcoming in our guides, our angels, extended master teachers we may work with. Thank you for your presence here. Calling in our ancestors. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your support on our journeys. Thank you to Gaia, Mother Earth, for supporting us and nourishing us. I'm calling in Spirit and our higher selves to be present here with us today. May we take what resonates and leave the rest. And with that, I say, aho. Welcome, everybody. So, I would like to begin with a poem. I have a few poems I'll be reading throughout, and I'll share a little bit more about why I write poetry a little bit later in the talk. So, this was a poem I wrote back in January, actually in the airport in Guatemala, and it's about an experience I had in Guatemala. I went for a walk on the mountain yesterday. I walked in reverence, and the wildflowers in the trees told me they had something to say. It was in the stillness, in that noble silence, that they finally trusted that I would listen. They let out a sigh and began to sing, to remind me of simplistic little things. They said, "Slow down, observe, and you'll see. Notice your beauty in the flowers. Hear your song on the cricket's wings. Feel the breath of God blow across your breeze. Feel the breath of God as a soft summer breeze blows gently across your face. Let the rocks hold you and run your hands over the bark of the hawthorn trees. Have you ever felt the softness of vines on your face? Have you breathed in the warm air freshly exhaled from the trees? I took a walk on the mountain yesterday. I watched butterflies play and felt my soul expand. How did we become so disconnected? We know her as Mother Earth, yet sometimes she feels like a foreign land. The wind whipped my hair across my face, and I let it stay there. Let myself be engulfed by the wild beauty of this sacred place. A chill began to creep into my bones, and still I stayed upon that stone. I felt my soul began to sing, and my heart slowly burst wide open. My feet grew roots, and my breath added to that wild, wild wind. I felt the love of the earth, felt a growing trust from the birds and the trees. It felt more and more like home on that mountainside. Sing, the trees whispered. Sing and shine.
That was beautiful. That's amazing.
Thank you.
You wrote the poem?
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I will share a little bit more about where the inspiration for poetry came. So, if you would have asked me 3 years ago if I thought I was living from my heart and living in a heart-centered way, I would have totally said yes, 100%. I was happy, I was always looking to see the best in everybody, always saw the silver lining, and I 100% still do all of that. However, I used to only want to see that and was in pretty much avoidance, although I didn't know of some of the other stuff that was there for me. And I was really on a spiritual journey because as I was, without going into, there's so many ways I could go, but keeping it without a ton of tangents, which I am a storyteller, so I'll share that off the bat, but everything does wrap back together. Um, I began my deep spiritual journey on a quest to understand myself better. I had moved up here to Alaska back in 2014. I thought that I had it together, and I moved up here, and the guy I moved up here with ended up calling me out on a lot of stuff. And at the time, I was like, what? No, I'm in denial about that. What do you mean?
Don't bring it up. Don't bring it up.
Yeah, and so we ended up breaking up, but the questions that he asked me really stuck with me, and why I didn't have the answers to those questions. Like, why are you so angry? Why are you treating me this way because of this thing, which has nothing to do with me? And other types of questions where I really was wondering, why am I angry? Why do I react certain ways to different things? And so it really began this quest into understanding myself a bit better, because I didn't want to treat people like that were close to me. Often there's a saying, we treat the people closest to us, sometimes we let out all the stuff on them, which they're the ones we care about the most. So I was really like, okay, yeah, let's figure this out. And so it began a much deeper journey spiritually than I had been before, where I'd been interested in things like tarot and astrology and numerology and all sorts of fun things. But I was really like, okay, let's dive into understanding myself better. So I went on a beautiful journey of understanding more, starting to dive in. A lot of that happened here at the Adams Center. I used to come very regularly when I moved up here, and I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have this community here. I learned so much spending time with people here. We used to have we'd stay after. I would be here for hours after, just talking to people and connecting, and really having people reflect back to me my beauty and the qualities about myself, where it was wow, this is really cool, and cool, that is, okay, let me learn more. And so then life kind of went, I started doing some other things. I was my job with bartending, and was really all right, doing the things, right? And it took me, and I thought this whole time I was still being very heart-centered and everything, which I was, but it took me having a really big rock bottom place to really understand just how many walls I had up and how much I was just guarding myself from so much in life. So I was fired unexpectedly from my job the same day I solidified my space for my business. And so I literally got my business license the day after I was fired, and was beginning to journey out into starting a business with this deep pain. Because for me, I know that getting fired from a job it may fall on a spectrum of where that feels for you in your life, on how much that would affect you. And for me, it was a complete shattering of my identity, my family at the time in Alaska. And right after that, one of my cats almost died, my car died pretty much. And I just had all this stuff happen where I was just like,
Crash and burn.
who am I now? I don't have all these things that were my identity, and I was fired essentially for being honest about something that I did, which was against policy, but I was even told after, well, if you would have just lied about that, we wouldn't have done anything. And I was just like, well, I just that didn't even cross my mind. How? So it just felt like it was 100% the universe being time to go. All right, you're starting this business. Literally the same day. I had just had the interview with the space I was holding, and came in that day and was like, don't worry guys, I'm not going anywhere for a while. And by that night I was fired. So it was, and it took me I can laugh about it now, but it was very deeply affected me. I lost all of my sparkle. I lost my seeing of beauty, which, by the way, did anybody see the beautiful sunrise on the way here? Oh my gosh. So I really went into this space of like, what do I do now? Like, I don't know who I am anymore. And through that, I began to really deeply dive into like rebuilding myself in a way. My business is Wild Quartz Wellness, and I speak about her as if she's her own entity, because it really does feel like she is her entity. She chose me to bring her into the world, and we're working together with our mission for the world to bring more ease into people's lives. And so I could feel her being like, okay, you need to get your together because we have work to do in the world. And I was just like, okay, I do. I need to figure out. I was afraid of being seen. I was afraid of connecting deeply with people. And now all of a sudden I'm a business owner, and before I was a happy, do everything the best way employee. I will do it the best I can and try to improve, but I always had somebody saying like, this is what you do. And so now I'm like, okay, here we go. So I ended up, I started to work with cacao. And so cacao is something that, show of hands, is anybody familiar with cacao? Cool. So cacao is a plant medicine from South America. It's basically chocolate in its rawest form. And ceremonial cacao comes from a few different strains of the cacao species. And so I began working with a strain called the chancho bean, which is from, and criollo, which are both from Guatemala and Peru, and was connected with, there's a girl that I really look up to, without going into kind of backstory, who is the steward, essentially, of this entity called Cacao Ceremonial Drinking Chocolate, and she works to bring cacao to the Western world. And so I was really reaching to, that was how I was introduced to it, was from a friend. And so as I began to work with cacao, which is essentially chocolate, it's like a chocolate drink, it's known for helping you be in your heart. It's a heart-based intention. And it's said in the indigenous cultures in South America that cacao, the spirit of cacao, is present in the beans. There's spirit, we're very much here, they're very much into the intuitive and feeling and being really connected with nature. And so there's spirit that lives in all the plants. And for cacao, it was all about being in your heart. And so there's a prophecy that was said that whenever humans fall out of balance with nature, the spirit of cacao will bring her medicine out of the jungle and into the Western world to connect us back in with our hearts. And so I began working with her every day. I had a drink, would make the drink in the morning, would have a drink every morning, and I also worked with essential oils, which I was going to pass this around if anyone wants a drop of rose oil. Might as well. Yeah, so feel free to take a drop and rub it on your heart space, because as I was working with cacao, I also started to work quite intentionally with essential oils as well. So specifically with rose and actually with carnation, which I don't have with me today. And but both of those oils are really all about being in your heart. And so I was using the oils every day, was drinking my cacao every day, and I also began working with a mentor who is still a very big presence in my life, and who, without him, my journey would have still gone, but I needed the accountability that he provided and the different perspectives that he was offering, and just the constant reflection back of, he would always say, I'm a few steps before you, I know where you've been, and what drew me to him was actually, he was sharing, he's in my soul family, we are spread around connected with online, and what drew me to work with him was his post on using pain to create your, like, I forget how he phrased it, but it was like moving from pain to passion. And so I was like, wow, like he gets it. Like I'm in this deep place, I don't know where I'm at, and here he is posting about also having been in a deep place and using that as fuel to move forward. And so working with him has quite literally changed my life. And working with him, I really began to dive. I thought we were going to go right into business stuff, but that was not the case. That was not the plan, to just go right into developing my business. I really was feeling guided while I got fired to not have another job, and that was a big leap of faith, because everything in me was like, oh no, like let's get a different job, maybe you can do, I had just gotten my massage therapy license probably like 6 months before. I was like, let's get into the massage, let's just start working there, or maybe you could get like another bartending job or a serving job somewhere and just like do that. And I was so strongly guided. It was like, no, do not. I'm just like, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, what do you mean? Like, no. And luckily I had built up a savings working before. Thank you to my parents for instilling me to do savings, because I relied heavily on that. And I also ended up maxing out a couple credit cards. And then my family also helped me a bit with rent a few months. And so, and at the same time they were like, what are you doing? Why don't you have another job? I'm like, I just feel like I'm not supposed to. I don't know what to tell you. I just feel like I'm not supposed to. And I was still being guided to take a lot of continuing education classes, and I went to Sedona for a retreat, and I'm just like, what? Like, okay, universe, like, trusting you. And so right before I went to Sedona, which was in April of 2018, I was actually guided right before to be like, okay, I think it's about time to get a job. And little rewind, during that time I was really like, it's like, no, your full priority is to dive into this, like really spend all of your energy working on yourself very deeply, like cocoon, cocoon, cocoon. Like, and the metaphor many of us have, I'm sure, heard about the butterfly is the caterpillar completely dissolves before the butterfly regrows and then emerges. And so it really felt like, looking back, that was my dissolving, cocooning, like, transformation time. So, and I worked through a lot of different woundings around, a lot of inner child work and healing around different relationships. And so come April, I'm getting this feeling like, oh, okay, I should get a job. And so I prepared my resume right before I went to Arizona. And my last day in Arizona, before I came back, I was actually, my neck had gone out maybe a month before, like really bad, like felt I couldn't move, it was very bad. And I was guided by a friend to see a certain chiropractor. And so I went there, had gotten my treatment all done, and was so glad to be going to Arizona with free movement of my neck and body. And they ended up calling me my very last day in Arizona. We're like, hey, we're just wondering, were you maybe looking for a job? We know that you were, a massage therapist, you have your own business. Like, are you by chance looking to, have a second job? We'd love to interview you to work here. I was like, yeah, actually, I've got my resume ready. When do you want to do an interview? And they're like, how about when you get back into town tomorrow? So it's like, okay. And so literally I got back and I started the job like 2 days later, and I'm still there. It's been an amazing place to be, and it all made sense why I wasn't supposed. I'm like, okay, yeah, I was waiting for them. Like, this is like where I was meant to be, rather than force and go against my knowing of, so. Yeah. So, and as I was working with Adam, who's my mentor, his name is Adam, he's an incredible person, and he's on his own journey as well, of course, like we all are. And every revelation and every insight that I began to uncover, it was like, okay, now I know this, which as a lifelong learner and seeker of knowledge and lover of going to trainings and loving all of the like infusion of knowledge, I was then guided to, okay, you know this, but like let's now really begin to embody this. And so with that, much to my like, but it was involved taking action on what I'd been learning. And so it involved a lot of challenging conversations. It involved making my boundaries known by communicating them. Like, it involved sharing my truth. It involved speaking up. It involved a few relationships coming to a close. It involved a lot of stuff that made my body like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, like, it's feel the fear and do it anyways, as long as it really excites you. And so that was where I was really tuning into, okay, like, this is exciting. This is something I really want to do, but it also scares the crap out of me. And so it was like, okay. And there's so many times looking back, I can remember that I resisted my heart's guidance, like, very vividly, like, specifically with one relationship that always pops in my mind whenever I speak of this type of thing is I knew that we were not supposed to continue in our relationship. And I remember using my pendulum and kept getting a no, and I was like, well, maybe I'll ask it a different way, you know, I'll phrase it differently, and it kept being like, no, but you're supposed to do this, and doing the whole, you know, the muscle testing, kept getting a no, and I was like,
So when did you start listening?
I'll do it next time, so I'm gonna do it anyways. And with that, it's like, none of those experiences of when we don't necessarily listen to our heart's guidance is wrong. It really allows us to, okay, let's learn this even more. You know, let's really, and sometimes it gets even more sticky and you learn even more lessons and you're like, wow, okay, now I know for sure I don't want to do that again. And so, yeah, and so as I began to open more, I was also being guided to trust more, and I was being guided to leap more, and being guided to just go with it. And so, yeah. So the journey of opening and living from your heart is not necessarily an easy path, but is often called the hero's journey, because it takes a warrior to go into your shadows and into the dark parts of your heart and to really cultivate like light from that space. And so part of, I have another poem I wanted to add. I want to make sure it's right. So as we open, we get to face off with all that we've locked away in our hearts. And for me, that was quite a bit of stuff. And so, yes. So I am going to read a poem that I wrote. I have about being in some shadow places. And let's see. Yeah, okay. And so, okay, I'll share about that in a minute. Yeah. So here's another poem I wrote, and I don't have the date on this one, but I'm pretty sure it was in the springtime or the early, like late winter of this year, 2019. Have you noticed that aching in your bones? Have you felt that longing in your soul? For what you might not know, but follow it. Explore those uncomfortable feelings. Ask them why they're here. If they've come to visit you, show them mercy and have no fear. For too long we've neglected them, pushed them deeper down. If we don't let them see the light of day, perhaps they'll just go away. Take the lid off the box. They're begging to get out. It's getting cramped in there, and the spirits can hear your gentle shout. Maybe now is the time, it's as good a time as any, to make more space inside and to transmute those ancient memories. Gracefully we approach that aching, thank you for your part. I'd like to let more light in. I'd like to live more from my heart. I've got these walls, you see, and I have a feeling that's why you're here. To let my walls down, I get to face these fears. This is new territory for me, you see, but I'm learning every day that when I embrace my shadow side, my gifts come out to play. It's no longer you versus me, no longer have to hide these things. After all, what is a shadow except a place that's lacking the light? What if I simply moved, shone a light on this side too? What if everything I thought I feared turned out to be my greatest strength? Sure, some things are meant to go, but oh, what we could learn when we choose to let more light in and when we choose to let love win. So I was definitely in a lot of shadow work this whole spring and early winter up until about summer when, of course, the light goes back out. And that's what I think is really beautiful for my journey, at least in Alaska this last year. And since I've gotten back from Guatemala, really, with Guatemala, I was guided to make a lot of changes. And I was really, 2019, and Adam, my mentor, also really challenged me that 2019 was a year of no more consumption, only action. And I was like, okay. It's like, you don't need to learn anything else. Sure, you can in the future. That's not like forever, but let's like take a break from constantly consuming out of a way of avoiding doing the action. Because I had these, I'm not good enough unless I this. I'm an imposter unless I do this. How many people, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of us can relate to feeling like we're not good enough, or that we need to do more, or that we are, a fraud or whatever in your life? And so I was really challenged to be like, let's bring some action and let's just start to embody and share what we've learned, share more and bring it into your clients and step into your role. And so, yeah, a lot of my shadow work was around feeling, which I'm a very feeling person, and your heart chakra is all about feeling and receiving. And so it only made sense that for me in my journey around opening my heart, I also was guided to have to feel it all. And I had been numbing myself from feeling the lows for a long time. I was so in avoidance of being seen as anything other than my bubbly, cheery self, which is my natural self. But I also had so many walls around feeling like I would let people see me if maybe I wasn't in a bubbly mood and I was just in my neutral, melancholy place. That's all good. Or letting people see that I was not happy, And so another resource that I gained that was really helpful for me was the system called Human Design, and some of you here may be familiar with it. I know there's a woman in the community, Peggy, who speaks quite a bit about it.
What's it called?
Human Design, and it's a really incredible system without going into too much detail, because we can talk about that another time, but it's really about helping you understand how you make decisions best, and what is your driver, and what's your authority, your personal authority, which for me in my Human Design is emotions. I am an emotional authority, and so it's all about riding the waves of your emotions. And so as I was stopping myself from, I used to smoke pot all the time. Like I was
Shut up.
literally, yeah, literally was chasing the highs always. And anytime I was feeling bored or feeling, there's a lot of, I mean, it wasn't only for this reason, but I used to have crazy social anxiety starting back in college, and that's where I was like, all right, cool, if I do this and I just smoke, and then I can like hide basically my uncomfortableness and just be there, and then I'm fine. And then it became where like that was I don't want to say it was a crutch, but it was definitely a way that I was avoiding unconsciously, I wasn't doing it on purpose, avoiding feeling my uncomfortableness in a social situation, or feeling the sadness if something was going on, and I would just smoke instead and be like, all right, now I'm chill. Like, and so as I was guided very strongly to like not do that at all, because I was guided that for me, that was the way that I had been numbing out. And so with this year being about action and integration, it was like, yeah, we're not gonna smoke anymore. You're gonna get to feel it all. And so when I did that, there was a lot that was coming up around, especially I had, with it being a lot of closure in my life, before I went to Guatemala, with 2018 being like, all right, let's set the boundaries, let's feel the fear and do it anyways, let's go in, let's, end those relationships, and in a sense end those cycles that I had been going through over and over and over. But I had like known the cycle, but I hadn't taken action to end the cycle. So when all of that happened quite a bit right at the end of the year in 2018, and then 2019, I was like, all right, I'm gonna feel it all. I went through a period of time where I was writing quite a bit of poetry about writing my feelings. I'm a huge believer. If you like to write or journal or anything, like I have notebooks, like I have a new notebook probably every 3 months that's filled with everything, like, and so if you're a writer or if that resonates with you, I highly, highly recommend journaling. Like, and so through that, I was also guided with what Adam referred to as creative alchemy, which is what, he's a musician, so he's recording an album now with a lot of his working through his pain came through in songs, and beautiful. I would love to share his album with you guys when it comes out. Like, it's amazing. But for me, it was coming through with poetry. And so it was like, okay, I'm gonna write, but then sometimes my writing would just turn into poetry. And the poem I read at the very beginning, I actually wrote in the airport in Guatemala, and there was no Wi-Fi at the airport in Guatemala, and I had like 6 hours to kill, and I didn't bring a book because I was not going to like necessarily read books, and so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll bring out my notebook and I'll write. And so I ended up writing a series of poems. I wrote probably 8 or 9 poems just sitting in the food court as I ate my Subway sandwich, and then I got on the plane and it was just like, whoa, poetry's pretty cool. And I would love to read you guys more poems from that time, but I'm gonna eventually put them out somewhere. So, but yeah, and so then as I got back, it was like, okay, now how can I work through these emotions and create something out of it? And so I'm going to read another poem about shadow work time. And cool. So things are going along well, moving along just fine, and then bam, you're stopped in your tracks, paralyzed by something you can't control. What the F, universe? Is this some cruel joke? Why is this happening? Shifts to what is showing up? Why have you come to visit me? And what are my emotions stirring up? Take a break, slow down, observe. You might not know right now, but just stay curious and breathe. I'm not here to torment you. It's no longer you versus me. There's something here for you, but for now, just breathe. Breathe into the pain, breathe into the sorrow. Be here for now. Move through these feelings and keep hope for a better tomorrow. No pressure, no judgment, if that day isn't actually tomorrow. We're just breathing space into here, learning to accept our trials. It used to be a battle. Push it down, lock it away, and pray we didn't drown. But something's changed for me. I'm learning how to be here now. Breathing love into that uncomfortableness, honoring my sadness and sorrow, asking questions of my anger. What message do you carry? What is underneath? Bottle it up and then explode, afraid of hard conversations and afraid what I might be told if I truly spoke from my heart. So instead I kept it in, thinking somehow I would win, when really it just ate me from the outside in. I've got a new approach, honoring all parts of myself. It's healthy to let our emotions out. It takes some practice, but I'm here for that. Learning to express those challenges in a way that honors us both. Expressing those uncomfortable feelings without resentment or spite. Learning to bring the darkness into the light. No pressure, no judgments. It's okay to take our time. As long as we keep showing up, we'll be just fine. So stay here for a while. Just be present and breathe. So a lot of that time was about being here now was my mantra, which I know Ram Dass is a leader now, but it was a mantra that came to me without knowing too much of. I hadn't studied Ram Dass, but anyways, he was a very wise man, because that's an incredible mantra to have. And so writing the poetry when I was in these dark places where I was just like, what is going on, helped me to keep moving and flowing. And I found that often after I wrote the poems, which sometimes multiple poems would come out at a time, I would feel lighter, or I'd return back into that neutral space. And a lot of my journey has also been around like being comfortable in the neutralness. And I used to call it melancholy, and being like, oh, I'm in this melancholy state, like, it must be bad. And Adam was like, well, what if that's just neutral? Like, it's a cool perspective shift. Like, and so I was really moving from feeling like I only had to be on high, being completely in avoidance of the low and anything else, and really finding, I like to say, riding the waves. And so, like, when I'm up and feeling wonderful, like, go with it. And if I'm starting to feel, or something happens in the world or in my life where I am, like, not feeling so good, like, that's okay. Like, and just giving myself some space to be with it and not run from it, avoid it, numb it, hide from it, like, and it's been a process, and it's a really beautiful process, because it's allowed me to really feel way more at ease in a lot of situations, because I'm not always trying to be somebody that I think everybody wants me to be, which is something that is kind of silly, because most of us tell each other, just be yourself, like, just be yourself, right? And so it was like, okay, cool, yeah, I'm gonna let myself be myself. And so really quickly, a couple other ways I was using embodiment. These are actually our more bullet pointy. So is yoga. Yoga is a really wonderful way for me and for many people around embodying a lot of the truths that we're learning and a lot of the insight we're using. Yoga's I didn't even know there's a whole science of yoga that's all around, like the Yoga Sutras, which I recently found was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So yeah, yoga was a huge part, and still is a huge part. Essential oils, I've been learning about the emotional healing properties of essential oils, and I now create blends and sprays and work a lot with the emotional and the physiological properties of oils in my work. And the Gene Keys is an incredible resource. That's a little bit challenging to explain briefly, so if I'd love to chat with anybody more about that, but genekeys.com is an incredible, it's a journey, essentially your own journey of activating your gifts, activating your genius, opening your heart, and then opening into prosperity consciousness as well. So it's really beautiful. Huge part of my journey as well. And through all of these things that came together, it really solidified that part of my big mission in the world is helping people to be more in their bodies and calming their nervous system, because I found that through my use of all these different methods, I have been like unwinding myself inside of and really being in my body and being in wherever I'm at. And for me, I was not aware that I wasn't in that space until I was working through these, and I was like, wow, I feel so much more at ease in the world. And so and now I do that, like I said earlier, with my business. So, and I wanted to end with one more poem. Okay. So this was from August 30th. I'm stepping deeper onto my path, taking steps forward as I'm pulled like by a magnet towards all of my greatest hopes and dreams. I'm placing my feet firmly here, letting myself land on each step, feeling the progress and the process of my growth along the way. I step forward with wonder and delight, finding the magic in the moment, taking it all in. The colors, the sounds, the feelings, the views. I walk with a sense of presence, unhurried and observant, appreciating the journey on this path of mine. I'm taking steps forward, each step unique and beautiful, and sometimes I linger, letting go, listening to my soul as I wait here before eventually continuing on. At times I've strayed from this path, and each time coming back, it feels like coming home. I could feel it in my body. This was and is where I belong. The feeling in my soul, my heart bursting with joy, love flooding my body to such a capacity that I had to squeal and laugh and twirl and shout. The longer I've walked this path, the more at ease I've felt, the more connections I've made with other souls like me. Today I'm standing firmly and completely here on this path. I'm so honoring myself for choosing time and time again to trust my heart, my soul, my whims. Here I am, Great Spirit, here to serve, to stand, to lead, to love, to give, as I walk this path forevermore.
I'm sure a few people have some questions.
Sure.
Nikki, if you'd
Yeah.
like to spend a few minutes with those.
Yeah.
I was curious that you had quartz in your name. Do you utilize quartz rocks in your yogi?
Yeah, so I love crystals. The name for my business was an inspiration between wildflowers and quartz crystals. And so it came from the wild beauty of nature, the flowers growing where you might think they might not grow, like popping out of a rock at the summit of a mountain. We're like, wow, how are you growing here? And then quartz crystals and clear quartz being such a master crystal in a way. It's kind of under, it's like low-key, super awesome. And so quartz amplifies the properties that you intend into it. And so I have lots of crystals in my shop. I'm big crystal lover, and yeah, so it came from my deep connection with quartz crystals. Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else have any comments or questions for Nikki?
Yeah. Your shop's been mentioned a few times, but does it like exist on this planet? Do you have an address?
Yes, I do. Thank you for bringing that up. So I do have an office. I'm located over by Taku Lake, over like off King Street and Diamond in that area. And I am there. I do massage. Most of my therapy is bodywork related, but I also I introduce guided relaxation, aromatherapy, and crystal bowl sound healing. And I also have a number of other instruments that I use as well during my sessions. So, and I also do energy work. So it's really a delicious blend. I call it holistic bodywork, where the most part of it is bodywork related, but we're working on mind, body, spirit.
And afterwards, Nikki will have she has a notebook, then if you want to be on her mailing list or something, she'll take your email and you can be in touch with people. Plus, her website is also on our our art send out.
Yeah.
So,
Just to follow
and she has cards also.
up on that, what's the address?
It's 7801 Shun Street, Suite B,
Oh,
99518.
That's your house.
Yeah.
well, yeah, I was drove by it once. That's interesting.
I have a question. So when someone comes to you, is it piecemeal, you can choose this, or do you work with people on a comprehensive, okay, we're gonna start here and then we're gonna go through this and do this and do this? Like, how do you?
Kind of let people, as they come in, you can book a session at the time of the session, and most people that I see do want to start with body work, and with that I'm introducing it really kind of, I go with where I'm guided, or if someone comes in and intentionally says like I'd like to do energy work, or I have this intention, I'd like to do this. I have had people come in that want to connect more with their hearts, or that want to feel like have a release of trauma that's been stored in their cells. And so people do come in with different intentions that are not just like, oh, I have, my neck, I can't turn my neck, which, so I also do work at a chiropractic clinic, and so I blend a lot of really detail-focused medical massage therapy with like Swedish and then the energy and holistic side as well. So, did that answer your question, or
Yeah,
not really?
I think you did.
Okay, yeah, so if somebody comes in, they kind of base it off of that, or maybe what they might mark on their intake, and just check in with them and what they're looking for.
So it could possibly be they would think they want this, but you are guided to think that they need this more to prerequisite whatever else they might want.
In a way, yeah, I guess. Just like with the body, sometimes where the symptom is presenting isn't necessarily always the cause of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's working with where the person is feeling the pain, but also bringing their awareness and the healing to the area that might be causing that as well. And so, yeah.
So guys, Nikki is going to hang around afterwards so we can visit with her and you guys can get more information. She has business cards and she's going to pass or she'll have her notebook here so that you guys can keep in touch with her. So please give her another round of applause.